Every
So
time you spoke about her in interviews, she comes across as a woman of great strength and character,
yeah,
but she's had a very tough journey.
very.
And you were there for one of her tough moments when you were 9 years old, and she heard sirens in the background. She gave you a package, right?
Yeah, she thought she heard sirens because she was on certain drugs. So obviously, I think now that I know what that is and what that can do to someone's mind, I get it now. Because obviously, when I was 8, I was like, okay, my mom's telling me that she's hearing sirens. She was paranoid about something, and I know exactly what she was going through at the time with a certain family member of hers. I can't really say much about that, but she got paranoid, and I think with along with the whatever she with the drugs that she took with that, obviously that I don't know, I don't have that resulted, but then she had asked me to flush her drugs down the toilet, and it was my first time actually seeing that. um what was the question? I always get so confused.
No, it was just this story. This is
Yeah,
a
yeah,
defining point.
defining
And
that.
yeah,
Yeah, so I had to flush the drugs down the toilet, and I was really confused by what had happened. um
you've spoken in the past that this was the moment where the child in you died.
yeah.
I have some questions, but just before that, for those who don't know, if you can just set the context. So, where does your father fit into this? What is his situation, and where's he at this point?
Okay, at this point, like I said, he had taken my mom and I back to Bahrain from the Philippines because they had their own marital issues. I guess there was a series of affairs, and he couldn't really, keep true to the commitments that he had promised that he would keep. So my mom took me back to the Philippines, and I think my grandfather from my dad's side's, I don't know, last dying wish was to bring us back. So then he did take us back. We lived with him for some time. Again, it didn't work out with the two of them. They did try to make it work again, though, but it didn't work out. And at this point was when my mom was like, "Screw it, fuck it, we're like, I'm doing this on my own." Um, Sometimes with the help of my father, it was always an in and out situation, but it wasn't ever really consistent. So my dad at this point was probably running whatever businesses he had, and we weren't really fully in contact with him like that. Like throughout my life, from my childhood until now, I can only really remember at most, maybe in my childhood it was more frequent, but my relationship with him was mostly like, okay, like I'll receive a phone call like every few months saying, "Hi, how are you, Baba? How's school going?" Okay, cool. Up until I was actually done with university, it was still a house school because there really wasn't much else
Yeah.
for him to ask, I guess.
Mm.
So
Where is
very
he now?
distant. He is now in prison. I think he's been sentenced to 15 years in prison
For?
for selling narcotics, for being part of that whole thing.
Every time I've heard you speak about your story, it feels to me that you have worked actively towards removing any kind of blame from anyone.
Yeah.
And you've spoken about your favorite quote is by Anne Frank, where she says that I keep my ideals because, in spite of everything, I still believe people are good at heart. And it feels like you're actually practicing that. For your father, you've spoken in the past that what's a man going to do? Society clearly didn't give him any chance, and he was repeatedly dealt a bad hand. And you've tried to put yourself in this position to see what you
Yeah.
could have done. And the same with your mother as well, in the situation she was in.
Both of them didn't have the same opportunities that I did now. And I think that's why I thank my mom for having given me the opportunities and, like all these options that we have now available to us with social media. And for me, for getting the education that I did, none of them had that. You know what I mean? So I can't really blame them for
Yeah.
any of that.
I find that very powerful because you worked on identifying there's a lot of things that were not in your control,
Right.
and that's not your fault.
Yeah.
But what you're trying to do is you're trying to pick out the things that you can control, which
Exactly.
which I feel is your reaction to what happened and whether you're going to let that define your present and your future.
Exactly.
I'm saying the right things, I hope, or is my half
You
stupid
are.
part this talking?
No, 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 no,
No.
no.